Since I've started my solo channel, I have not done any hip hop related videos somehow, some way. I just haven't got around to it. And I was like, dang, how is it that I'm hip to the games and I have yet to do a hip hop related video on my channel? So today I figured it'd be the perfect time to share with you my top 10 favorite hip hop albums of all time. And obviously on Hip to the Games, I emphasize favorites because again, that's just the albums and the songs and the players and the teams that mean a lot to us in some way, shape, or form. You know, it doesn't have to be this serious list of who you think is the best of the best. Like, you know, I like to keep it relaxed and just keep it fun and do favorites. So I'm going to share my top 10 favorite albums with you today. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to drop another video, and that one is going to be my top 10 favorite songs. So I'm going to love to do these videos, and I would love to see your favorite albums and favorite songs in the comments as those videos pop up. So again, be sure to share those with me. I would love to know what yours are. You know, that's the beauty of music, especially the beauty of hip hop. That hip hop tree is so huge, man, and there's so many branches on it that you can pull from. So to be able to just commune and share what each other is listening to and what our favorites are and why we like these specific songs or albums, like that to me is the dopest part. So I want to obviously bring that to this platform here. So one thing I should mention out the gate is that I tried my best not to do duplicates. I wanted to emphasize not having duplicate artists or duplicate, you know, songs, things of that nature, on these lists, because it would be very easy for me. You know, I think when you think of favorites, you know, you might have a lot of favorites from one artist and you don't want your whole list to be from one artist, right? So that's something that I definitely tried to do on my list. So even as these are my top 10 favorites that I share, they may not be like my literal top 10 favorites just because I wanted to diversify my list a little bit. But for the most part, I tried my hardest. To make that top 10 my genuine top 10 favorites while still being a little more diverse and versatile with it. So we're going to be going from 10 to 1, and I want to start with number 10. My 10th favorite album of all time is actually Illmatic by Nas. That may come as a surprise because it usually is seen as one of the top hip hop albums ever, like period. But for me, it's number 10, and it's not because I don't like it in any particular way or anything like that. I will say, compared to some of the other albums that will come up on this video, it doesn't have as much like sentimental value to me. Obviously, I just acknowledge that it's such a great album from Nas. And for him to be 19 and it's just again, it's like 10 songs of just heat, like just the best of his best work at that time put on one album. It's shorter than your typical album. I feel like a lot of albums are around 13 to 15 songs, but it's shorter than that, and yet it's still very thorough. It still captures his childhood and his youth and his upbringing and the things that he was struggling with, spiritually, physically, being in his environment, you know, how he wanted to write raps and be great at that. He knew, you know, how he dropped out of school, right? Things of that nature. Like, it's just really incredible to see where Nas was at such a young age. And obviously he had an all-star crew of producers, you know. Primo had some beats on there, Pete Rock, Right, The World Is Yours. Like, he had such an all-star crew. I'm having trouble thinking of all the names in my head right now, but I did review this album on Hip to the Games. It's not on video, but it's certainly on audio platforms, because it's such an amazing album, man. Like, the beats on there are incredible. The stories are even greater. You know, you think of something like Memory Lane. I love Memory Lane. That song is dope. Obviously it's Life's a B, right? Two of the greatest verses in hip hop are on one song, right? Nas or AZ kicking it off, you know. And then just I love his rapping his verse because it's so like complex. You know, I always say, like, when he's like keeping that sweat and street ghetto essence inside us because it provides us with the proper insight to guide us, like, that dude, man, he was in his pocket. And then Nas just comes right back. I woke up early on my born day. I'm 20. It's a blessing. The essence of adolescence leaves my body. Now I'm fresh. And my physical frame is celebrated because I made it. 1/4 through life. Some godly like thing created. Got rhymes 365 days annual plus some. Like, come on, man. Come on. Illmatic is definitely in my top 10. But there, like I said, there are a lot more with sentimental value for me. Moving on to number 9. This one is interesting, but number 9 for me is Gang Starr's One of the Best Yet, which dropped in 2019. If it wasn't 2019, it was definitely 2018, but I was pretty sure it was 2019 because that was my junior year in college, I want to say. Either way, it was around that time period. And so I'm a huge Gang Starr fan. I love DJ Premier's beats. He is my favorite producer all time. And Guru, to me, I saw a lot of myself in Guru in the sense that his rhymes were very simple. Like, Guru wasn't this complex all the time, super technique MC. Like, his rhymes were simple, but they still hit home, you know? And that resonated with me, especially at this point in my life. Like I always say, when a lot of my peers are running forward in this hip hop journey, I feel like I'm running backwards. Like, I'm trying to listen to all the stuff, I'm trying to catch up, right? But along that journey, obviously I'm aware of Moment of Truth. I'm aware of Hard to Earn. I'm aware of, the Owners and all these other, dope Gang Starr albums. I'm aware of those. But at that time, they had, DJ Premier had just dropped One of the Best Yet. So I'm like, oh, this is like a nice way for me to like get the modern aspect of Gang Starr, even though Guru, rest his soul, he's no longer here, but DJ Premier did an incredible job. And even like some of the features, right? Royce the 5'9", obviously, who's been very close with Premier since the passing of Guru, like the way they honored and put on for Guru at that time, like knowing that they were dropping a Gang Starr album, that like they took it seriously and they really wanted to honor Guru as if he was still here. So and I love that part about this album. Again, it's DJ Premier, so the boom bapness, the beats are there, but I just love the it was just Gang Starr through and through, man. And it was, like I said, it was really like my modern like absorption, if you will, of Gang Starr, which made me want to go back and listen to their albums even more, right? They were already on my list as a younger hip hop head, right? I mean, I'm well, at that time I'm what, 20, 19, probably 20 years old, and it's trying to understand what they've done, but also appreciating like, hey, like they're still dropping new music. So I love that album. There's a lot of dope songs on there. There's a song called From a Distance. That's one of my favorites. That beat is just incredible. And Guru, I feel like he attacks the mic like perfectly. Obviously, like I said, Royce the 5'9", he has a song called What's Real. There's a song on there, I believe it's called Get It Together with Nitty Scott. Shout out Nitty Scott. She's another dope woman female MC. I hate that term, but if you couldn't tell, but she's dope. It served as like the chick record, as Guru liked to call them. And that's a nice song right there. A lot of dope stuff, again, a lot of Gang Starr, like OG collaboration. So, right, like the NYGs, you know what I'm saying? I think like Big Suge is on the album too. So it's just like I said, it's Gang Starr through and through. So that album to me, because it's the perfect representation of how hip hop can reach different generations. For me, that's why it cracks my top 10. And then going to number 8, we got DMX's It's Dark and Hell is Hot. Now, this album is special for me because obviously DMX is such a poster child for like how you can include your spirituality in your music. DMX was very open about his Christian faith, right? I too, if you've been following my platform, I too am open about my Christian faith. And even in some of the songs and the verses that I have dropped, whether it's freestyle verses on the gram or some of my songs that are on streaming, like and even verses I've done with other artists, a lot of it comes from like I just naturally am drawn inspiration. I'm drawing inspiration from God, from the things that I've learned, wisdom in the Bible, like that stuff just gets to me. And DMX was like the first, at least for me, the first top dog artist to be like, yo, like, yes, I'm in the limelight. I got the fame. I got the money. I can get whatever I want. Like, I'm the hottest artist, but this is my reality. Like, I can be DMX, but like, what about those moments when I'm Earl? Right. And he did all of that in this album. This album is such a tug of war between like DMX's faith, but also his doubts and his fears, coming up in his environment, being open to how he had multiple personality disorder, how he diagnosed himself, right, as a manic depressive. He was open about all those things. He didn't run from those things, and he gave you the good and the bad. He gives you a song like The Convo where he depicts the conversation with God, and he includes, all the things that, he's learning about God. But then you have a song like Damien, right, where he struggles with like that other voice, of the enemy, right, of the devil, and just trying to do this life thing. And really, from what we can see in retrospect, like trying to heal a lot of that trauma that he went through. I mean, he does an incredible job on this album, and again, that spiritual aspect really does it for me. And obviously, and again, it's DMX, man. The energy, the honesty, that is the dog, man. He brought all of it, and I really appreciate that album so much. And moving on to number 7, we actually have Blue in Exile's Below the Heavens. This is an interesting one. There's an interesting backstory to this because one day, I want to say 2, maybe 3 years ago, probably 3 years ago, one day I was scrolling on Twitter and I see that album cover, and I think somebody had posted like, this album is like absolute classic. Like if you know, and it got so many retweets and likes and everything. And I kind of just bypassed it though. I didn't think nothing of it. I'm like, a lot of people in the hip hop community is saying this is a classic. Like I got to do my homework. I got to catch up. But again, just like a passing thought. Fast forward, I end up doing an interview with an artist by the name of You'll Never Know. Shout out my guy Neva. He's been on Hip to the Games multiple times. But the very first time I got to talk to him, I think I asked him about his 5x5, and he was saying like, oh yeah, he was listing off his artists, and then he said Blue, and I think he asked me like, you familiar with Blue? And I said no, and he was like, you don't know Blue in Exile, Below the Heavens? And I'm like, nah. And again, right, mind you, I just seen that picture of the cover on Twitter, but by name it's not clicking. He was like, man, as soon as you're done talking to me, listen to this album and thank me later. And that's exactly what I did. And like I said, lo and behold, when I searched the album, I realized it was that same album I saw on Twitter like a couple days prior. And I told myself, if this album is really what people say it is, I'm going to review it on my album or on my podcast. And lo and behold, I love this album and ended up reviewing it on my podcast also. And again, that's on audio platforms. I wasn't doing video at the time. But that album to me, I mean, it's one of those albums for me where, because at the time I was 23 or 24 listening to that album. And that's the same age pretty much Blue was when he wrote this. So a lot of he references that in some of his songs, and you can experience his wisdom at such a young age. And just, it's a fun album, but it's also like super inspirational, knowing that he was this young kid who wanted to make it. And even fast forward, right, he's been a very successful, hip hop artist in exile, right, with these amazing inspirational beats like this album. And again, it's called Below the Heavens, right? So there's that spiritual element too, that Blue also is very open about, especially on this album, but really throughout his career, he's been open about that. And so again, that reached me in a different way, because it's like, dang, like I'm listening to this at the age that he was when he dropped this. So I kind of like see myself through him in a lot of ways. So that again, and indeed it is a classic, underground classic, if you will, hip hop album. And then number 6, I gotta go with Tupac's first album, Tupacalypse Now. Again, I know for some of you that might be a surprise, obviously I love Me Against the World. I think that's Pac's best album. Obviously All Eyes on Me has all the hits, and there are a lot of, dope songs on that album, and I enjoy listening to it. But for me, again, it's that sentimental aspect. Tupacalypse Now was the first hip hop album I listened to straight through, no skips, when I told myself, like, I'm going on this hip hop journey. In 2017, when I decided, like, all right, Des, like, Hoop Dreams aren't panning out, Like, you got to find interest in other things. And then it was like, okay, let me see if I can love hip hop the same way I love basketball and the NBA and all in the WNBA, right? All the history and everything, right? I wanted to be as obsessed with this as I was with basketball. And so when I started out, I was going through all the rabbit hole, down the rabbit hole of artists. Pac was at the top. He became my favorite artist. Obviously, I knew about him and everything like that, right? But like, to actually study him and study why people liked him and his personality and his rhyme style and how he evolved as an MC. Because early Pac, like I said, this is gonna surprise a lot of you, because early that first album flopped, right? Tupacalypse Now flopped. It didn't do as well as Tupac thought it should have. And this was like, he was recording this album while doing the movie Juice, so he wasn't like top dog yet, you know. And obviously coming from Digital Underground, you know, working with Shock G, Money B, you know, at the time he was a roadie, right? He was a dancer. So again, not a lot of people, you seen him, but you didn't really know what he was capable of. But he dropped this album, and like I said, it was the first album I listened to straight through, and to me, it was the core of what Tupac wanted to do with his music. Because a lot of people, again, very political, right? He had a lot of State of the Union, very bold and blunt State of the Union type songs on here. You think of a song like "Trapped," right, which is which details a lot about like incarceration, right? Or my favorite song on the album, "Words of Wisdom," where he kind of, you know, he had a poem when he was younger called "Lady Liberty Needs Glasses," right? So he was talking about, you know, kind of like the state of the world and everything, and freedom and all that. And he kind of carries that on with this song. And, you know, there's a lot of songs on there. Like I said, those two in particular are dope. But then he also shows his wild side in a song like The Lunatic, right? It was really an introduction to Pac, but people didn't get it because he was still so young and still so underground at the time. But to me, I really enjoy that album because, like I said, it was before Pac had the fame and the eyes on him. It was before he was, you know, popping bottles and dealing with women, right? Like, it was like a lot more basic and it was a lot more like fundamental, because he was just starting out. But that's the part of it that I appreciate. So, like I said, Me Against the World is my favorite album, but like, with the sentimental value, Tupacalypse Now is to me is very underrated, because again, to me it shows who Tupac was at his core. All right, we're getting into the top 5 now. At 5 we got Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers. All right, if you follow Hip to the Games, that is the most recent album review and actually the first one that is available to watch on YouTube. So if you want to watch that, be sure to tap in with that. But yeah, Enter the Wu-Tang. So I said Tupacalypse Now was my first listen straight through of a hip hop album, like when I started taking this journey serious. But this one was the first like why am I using the term borderline? Straight up classic album that I listened to straight through. And I remember like it was yesterday. I was in college and I had some time off and I was just listening to this album, and I'm so fascinated how 9 rappers can get on one project and they're all dope. The kung fu instrumentals are dope. The lyrics are hard. It's crazy. And then I had class soon, so my listening got interrupted because I had class. But even in my 50-minute class, all I could think about was getting back to my dorm and bumping this album, or not even getting back to the dorm, but just class is over, get my headphones on and continue listening to the album, because it captivated me so much. You know, like I said, Wu-Tang, again, I almost have no words because I feel like I spilled them all out in my album review, but man, Wu-Tang is such a groundbreaking group, and they were so authentic and rugged and just themselves, man. Like, they were themselves. And just, it's really incredible to see a dynamic like that, where it's that many rappers and they're all that dope. Like, I don't know if we'll ever see that again, you know. And so that album definitely it has a special place for me. Like I said, where I was when I listened to it, and just the overall effect that has on hip hop, you know. Again, nobody was really doing kung fu stuff. They're using, you know, all these kung fu sounds and stuff. They're referencing the movies and stuff. Like, you weren't really hearing that, but they had their niche and they stuck to it, and it led to a very successful career for them. So, yeah, Enter the Wu-Tang definitely cracked my top 5 in that regard. All right, number 4 on my top 10 favorite albums is Mos Def's Black on Both Sides. All right, this album to me is, I would say, like, it's the definition of pro-black. Like, you know, again, Mos Def, he talks about even like the water crisis. In this album, he talks about, you know, you have a song like Umi Says where it's, you know, tomorrow ain't promised, you know, but it's like, hey, you know, you have today, like, shine your light on the world, you know, and he harmonizes and stuff. He's not even really rapping, right? It's soul, it's soulful, it's jazz, you know. He checked a lot of boxes in this album, you know, showed his versatility as an artist. Man, but then again, it was hip hop, right? Like, literally the song on there, hip hop, is one of my favorites. He shows so much of his palette as an MC, you know. Like I said, Mos Def is very soulful and has a lot of jazz influence, so that comes through in his raps, but he can also give you something gritty. But this album, like, it wasn't really none of that, you know. It was straight like it's a great introduction to who he was as a rapper. Like, he could talk about his upbringing in his hood, like in a song like Brooklyn, right? He could go toe to toe with a Busta Rhymes, right? He, like I said, he could talk about the water crisis. He can talk about hip hop in general. Like, it's just a lot that he gave in this album that I really resonate with. It's almost like kind of what I call like classy rap, for lack of a better term. Like, I can just kick back, let this play, and, you know, it's like good vibes either way, you know. And it makes me feel like I'm learning something new, right? Like, you know, having some of that education in there. Obviously, how did I forget a song like Mathematics, right? Like, this dude, that to me is one of the dopest, like, conceptually one of the dopest songs ever. Like, it's incredible. But yeah, man, Mos Def had a nasty debut. And speaking of nasty debuts, that's not the first one that'll show up here. But moving on to number 3. I got B by Common. And B and Black on Both Sides, you know, they're next to each other for a reason, because I just feel the same about them. But Common's for me is more inspirational, because B was a very, very important album for Common. I also reviewed this on my podcast. But it was very important because he was coming off Electric Circus, and a lot of people didn't like Electric Circus because he was playing with different instrumentals, and it seemed like Common's image changed, right? A lot of people, you know, he says it in They Say, right? They said the crochet pants and the sweater was back. They heard the corner. Now they say that brother's back, right? Because he kind of got back to his roots on B. You know, again, I think it was that underdog of like, all right, they ain't rocking with me. All right, let me remind them that, like, I was always this rapper. I just kind of changed my art for a little bit, you know, but people weren't rocking with Electric Circus at all. He makes B and it's just boom, you get everything. Production from Jay Dilla, Kanye. I mean, just like It's Your World is such an incredible way to end the album. Obviously you get the street stuff like The Corner, right? But then it's like I said, They Say, the food I really like. You know, there's a lot on here, man. This whole album, again, it's just one of those things that I don't think there's any skips on this album. You know, B is definitely regarded as Common's best album, I think, in the hip hop community, and it's definitely in my top 3 because, again, obviously being a Chicagoland area dude, like, obviously Common, you know, he reaches me a little more than other artists because he's closer in proximity, right? But, you know, it's this dude is incredible, and it's a lot of like pro-black. But I also felt like it was for the children too, right? Like, again, ending with It's Your World, and then it's like the voiceover of his dad, and then like the kids are saying what they want to be when they grow up, right? Playing off the title. You know, it's just an incredible album from start to finish. I mean, production, songwriting, instrumentals, you know, instrumentation, right? Lots of live instrumentation when you listen to Common. He loves, again, he's another artist that loves those jazz sounds, soulful sounds, and you get all of that in B. You know, he really bounced back with Electric Circus in a major way. All right, and then the top 2 here. Second favorite album of all time. Like I said, it wasn't Black on Both Sides wasn't going to be the only debut on here, and I had to go a Reasonable Doubt by Jay. Obviously, I know in recent events, Jay-Z is in hot water, but at the same time, this is one of my favorite albums of all time because for me, I'll be honest and say, like, for the longest, I kind of ducked early Jay-Z. Again, part of it was just naturally where I was going on the hip hop tree, but what I say specifically, like, you hear a The Evils, right? And that moment showed me how important it is to listen to music for yourself, because again, you fall into that trap. Again, I was a young kid, I'm thinking like high school, right? And you hear all these things even to this day, right? Oh, Jay-Z is, he's evil, he's the devil, all these things that people say. And so I remember listening to this album, and I was kind of afraid to listen to that song in particular, because I'm like, people say all these things like, let's see, and that song is a little spooky. But then you realize Jay-Z is simply comparing the evils in the streets, right? The evils in the streets to like devils, right? And that's something hip hop has always been open about, right? Tupac said the same thing. Like, he has a song, right? The streets are death row. And he said all the time, like, hell is where I'm from. It's that bad out here. And that's what Jay-Z was doing with the evils, right? And then playing on the word devils, right? He's saying, like, this environment is not conducive for me. Like, I'm trying to make it out, and I'm hustling, and I'm doing all these things because I'm trying to leave. It's not because I just ignorant and want to do it. It's because I want to leave. So to get that aspect from Jay, right? And just honestly, just listen to a classic album again, straight through, no skips. Like, Can I Live, Coming of Age, obviously my favorite song, Brooklyn's Finest. He's, sparring with Big, right? That's like such a dope moment in hip hop. And I mean, this album for Jay, especially for him to be a little more seasoned, right? He was like, what, 27 years old? This such a dope first album for Jay-Z. Like, I love that it really just stamped him as like, this is my upbringing. This is why I did what I did. And like, you can hate it. Can't knock the hustle, right? Like, this is my journey. This is my story. And this is what I always say on Hip to the Games. Everybody has a story, and a lot of people's debut albums chronicle their start to this thing. So for Jay-Z, that's what this was, and that's why it resonated with me heavy, because I really understood him in a way I never really took the time to understand him before, if that makes sense. I was able to dive into his life and his story way deeper than I ever thought I would. So yeah, Reasonable Doubt, and obviously the beats are crazy. He also had like an all-star cast of producers. Bring It On is my joint on there too. Like, a lot of dope songs from Jay-Z on that one. But then, of course, there can only be one. And my top favorite album of all time is Ambition by Wale. This is what I always say. Ambition by Wale was the soundtrack to my hoop dreams. I mean, you talk about legendary. The title track, Ambition. Miami Nights is my favorite. Double M Genius is my favorite. So many, like, I got so many favorites on this album. I could listen to it. Like, I will to this day bump that album like it just dropped. Because I always say, kind of to keep it brief, that era, late 2000s and then early 2010s especially, was like the Big Brother era of rap. So it's Wale, it's Drake, it's Kendrick, it's Cole, it's Logic, it's Lupe, it's Blue, right? It's a lot of guys that I haven't named also. But I mean, hearing them just talk about how they want to make it, right? This is exactly what this title track is about, but especially this album, right? And it just features, even the cover, it just features Wale looking up, right? It's just like, Wale carried such an ambitious spirit in this time. Like, he wanted to make it. He wanted to accomplish his goals. He wanted to do big things with music. And to see him in hindsight accomplish a lot of those things, that makes me happy as a fan, because I remember when this album dropped, and it was like, it was the present day. I remember being a kid, being younger, in high school and such, or at least approaching high school at the time this album dropped. I was in like middle school, and it was reaching me because my hoop dreams were still alive, right? So I'm channeling these themes of ambition and wanting to be legendary and all these things. But so is Wale, right? And he's signed to MMG and all these things, but obviously he has his sights on greater success. So he's trying to channel this ambition and find it within himself, and to see what he wants to accomplish in music and stuff like that. But like I say, this album was really the soundtrack to my hoop dreams. Like if I was practicing or even working out at home or something, like I was listening to this album because again, it was just reaching me to a point where it's like I see myself in Wale, even though there's this big age gap. Like I see myself in him in the sense of like we share the same ambition, we share the same focus, we share the same desire to be great. So this album always is going to take the cake for me as far as my top favorite album because it just means so much to me. And even as my hoop dreams died, right? Like I can still listen to this album and just think about my life and what I want to accomplish. Obviously with the podcast and the YouTube channel now, like it's going to fuel these days, right? So that's the dope kind of full circle part about it. But like I said, no matter what I'm doing, like this album is going to get played because it means that much to me. And it is really like, it's incredible. It's incredible. Again, probably not a lot of people's favorite album all time, but it's mine. And that's the point of all this, right? Music is subjective. So there you have it. That is my top 10 list of favorite albums. Okay, just running through them one more time. From 10 to 1, it goes Illmatic by Nas, Gangstar, one of the best yet, DMX, It's Dark and Hell is Hot, Blue in Exile, Below the Heavens, Tupac, Tupacalypse Now, Wu-Tang Clan, Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers, Mos Def, Black on Both Sides, Common, B, Jay-Z, Reasonable Doubt, and Wale, Ambition. All right, so like I said, I enjoyed going over this list with you. I would love to know your list in the comments. Please drop your list in the comments and even go as far as sharing why some of these are your favorites. I would love to know those stories and get those backstories of why you love them. And even if there were some that we shared, I would love to, see that as well. But yeah, like I said, this was a fun thing to do. I've been meaning to do this for a minute now. So, I had fun with that. And like I said, up next is going to be top 10 favorite songs. So as I said, I mentioned some of them in this episode, but not a lot, not all of them, certainly not all of them. So again, this is kind of what I want to keep doing. Like I said, I haven't done a lot of hip hop content, so I want to get these top 10 albums out, get the top 10 songs out. I'm eventually going to try to do instrumentals. And then I think I'm even going to do like music videos too. So really just cover a lot more hip hop, because so much of my focus has been on basketball as far as this channel. But I'm definitely going to ramp up the hip hop as of now. So that was my top 10 list of favorite albums. I appreciate you always tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me see those favorite albums. And then I'll see you in the next video.